Courtesy of Michelob Ultra Beer.
They say consistency is the key to success. They weren't wrong. So how about grabbing a beer that's consistently smooth, consistently refreshing, and consistently light? You might just find that the road to success can be pretty enjoyable. Michelob Ultra, the perfect balance of taste and refreshment, and only 2.6 carbs and 95 calories. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Enjoy responsibly. Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Welcome, everyone, to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Very happy to have you along for the ride for another show. This one is going to be of interest to you, like I hope they all are. We'll have Paul Lewis with Roy Lewis Construction. When we come back from break, I'll tell you what to expect from this conversation in a moment. If you're new to What's Working, here's what you need to know. What's Working is the radio show / podcast focusing on the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace trends shaping the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace around us. My goal for this show, now over 6 years, is to find guests who can give us insights into the trends shaping their business and tell the story of those trends in such a way that you and I can adopt some part of that trend for ourselves and make each of us a little bit better at whatever it is that we do. A better parent, better business person, better partner or colleague to business people, whatever it may be. That's the goal for the show. Let me give you some updates on what's going on out there before I tell you about what you can expect from Paul in our conversation upcoming. We've got I'm very excited, I'll say this correctly, to get Stephanie Bryan on the calendar. She and I have struggled to match calendars. She is the chair of the Porch Creek Indian Tribe, based in near Atmore, Alabama. They have 30-something businesses that they operate in the state of Alabama. And I'm very curious about their story, how they identify businesses to either start or to buy, to own under the Porch Creek brand, if you will. And like I said, we've struggled to get her on the show. We're back to a date on the calendar, and it is with a lot of hope that we can hold that date and get her on, because I'm eager to hear her story. I also want you to take note of the social media activity going on at Cam Marston. Under the different Cam Marston social media things, we've invested into upgrading the social media activity so that you can see more that's what's going on out there. I'm learning this stuff painfully. And I had thought for the longest time, social media is not for me. I'm only a consumer of it. I don't need to be promoting on it. And I learned that I was wrong. So in a short amount of time, we've seen our social media activity take off due to some help that we've contracted out. And as a result, picking up viewers, listeners, and feedback and things of that nature. It's wonderful to have them along, have the social media presence, which I didn't think I need, is now a regular part of the business world. You've heard me talk about that. And we are now purveyors of this social media stuff. Find me on find Cam Marston on Facebook, on Instagram. We even have a TikTok presence, believe it or not. If you're into the social media world, check us out. I'm happy to say that I've been asked to be the opening keynote speaker at the Alabama Broadcasters Association in August. I will get up there and talk about the trends shaping the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace, much of what this show is about. And a lot of the trends that I'll identify and go into detail on are the result of the interviews that this show has given me over the past 6 years. So I will be the opening keynoter talking about these things in such a way that the people in the room, both television and radio people from across the state of Alabama, can grasp these trends and utilize them to solve problems in their own workplace. Very much looking forward to that. And if you're looking for similar content for your own events, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or go to the website, cammarston.com, where you can see a little bit about the presentations, or you can go find me on YouTube, where we have sample clips of me delivering these comments. Love to talk to you about them. Finally, before we get into Paul Lewis, I've been really interested in the reception that one of the shows has received, and it's with a guy named Brad Davidson. Brad is one of the nation's top athletic trainers, and he has two niche customers rather. One of them is NFL left tackles. And if you know anything about football, you know the importance of that position. The second niche customer of his are busy and stressed executives, you and me. And he talks to us about how to lose the stress, lose the weight, get into shape. And go find that on the podcast. You can go to what'sworkingcam.com to find it. Well, there's the cue. We'll get more into Paul Lewis with Roy Lewis Construction in a little while. After the break, Paul is an advertiser on the show. He and I met for lunch the other day, just chatting it up. And I thought, my goodness, my man, you have content for a show, and we'll do that as soon as we get back. You're listening to What's Working. Be right back.
When making the largest investment choice in most families' financial portfolio, you need a realtor who truly understands the market and can negotiate favorable terms and conditions. I'm Angelo DiPaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty, the preferred real estate advisor for buying or selling along the Gulf Coast. For full access to the MLS in Mobile, Baldwin County, Pensacola, Destin, or Panama City, just Google Angelo DiPaola, the Coastal Connection.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. In the studio today, across from me sits Paul Lewis. He's been a longtime advertiser on the show, and when he and I sat down for lunch a week or so ago, he told me about the trends impacting his business, and I thought, man, this is content itself for a show. We'll get him to introduce himself in a moment, but the business has been around since 1984. Commercial contracting is the lion's share of what they do. A big emphasis on quality, a big emphasis on referrals, a big emphasis on their projects been around longer or get more notice than most other construction or commercial construction companies in town. Paul, thank you so much for your time. Welcome finally to What's Working.
Glad to be here, Cam.
Glad to have you here. It's been a while, and this is a long time coming. So I've got this about page printed from your website, but give me a little bit of the history of your organization, if you would.
Well, Roy, my father, started the company, and he came up through the ranks of commercial construction in Mobile. Started out at Martin Builders in the late 60s, and then worked with Ray Sumlin for many years. And he just had the pull to, start his own business and do it his way.
Yeah.
And so in 1984, he went out on his own and started Roy Lewis Construction.
And we'll talk a little bit about the headwinds that you faced since 1984, part of our conversation the other day. But it's the trends in the industry that, as you know, this show focuses on, is workplace, workforce, marketplace trends. And since COVID, the trends have been crazy, absolutely nuts when it comes to everything from labor to cost of materials, and those are two that we want to start with. So talk to me from your point of view of what are the trends in the labor in the marketplace? What do you need? What are you finding? Let's start there.
Well, at first, when COVID hit, we had plenty of business booked, and a lot of that business went away.
Yeah.
So we went from having a full slate of projects for our guys to work on to 2. And so at the time, I think we had 12 employees in the field, and they were able to share those 2 jobs. We self-performed a lot of the work, and they were profitable. So it ended up working out. And then about August came after, I guess that was 2020, and it's been unstopped since the business.
So like so many businesses, there was an initial fear. What's going to happen? Everybody pull back. Everybody put on brakes. And then suddenly the dams broke open.
It did. And initially what we found out was some materials were harder to get. And that's still the case, by the way, with some. But more recently, just the labor shortages have really impacted the workflow more than anything else. I talked to one of my vendors, an electrician we work with a lot, and he said some of the larger services, like electrical services and feeders, are a year still to get up. And we're quoting a job this week, which is a much smaller job. And right now, the service for that job is a 480 volt system is 45 working days, so 9 to 10 weeks. And that's about as long as the entire project would be.
So what was it before COVID? What was it when there were no labor shortages? So we can get a compare.
Well, you had access to as many people as you needed a lot of times.
Yeah.
It wasn't as much of a challenge. Now, there's still plenty of work. There's probably just as much work, if not more, as when we've been at some of our busiest times. But, a lot of the subcontractors, the size of their crews have decreased quite a bit. And so what we're finding is the overall schedules, because of that, we're probably finding it takes 15% longer to build a project now. And so that's a definite challenge. We take care of our guys. We haven't had a problem keeping our guys. We try to take care of them, but some of the trades have suffered.
So you don't have in your business, in Roy Lewis Construction, a shortage as much as you're dealing with the subcontractors who have the shortage.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Electrical seems to be the big one.
It is. And then there's another thing we're seeing is, pricing. We talked about this before, but, our area is still experiencing income of population. Yeah, a lot of the realtors, I have realtor friends who, who work really hard, and they're, despite the higher interest rates we're seeing, they're still busy as they've been.
Yeah.
Some of the other people that got into it during the wave, I guess you could say that a lot of them are getting out of it now. I talked to a vendor this morning, as a matter of fact, and he said, you're seeing construction slow down in certain parts of the country because of that migration we're talking about. But in our area, you're still seeing price increases. So these are companies that serve broad areas and supply materials in broad areas, and they're saying like Alabama, Mississippi, or there was a roofing shingle that they sell, and Alabama, Mississippi were the only states that saw increases in pricing recently.
Interesting. So we've got regional trends across the nation. Of some places are seeing price decreases. We're still seeing price increases, as well as product material shortages.
That's right.
Yeah. Is it a result of migration of people moving within the country, of trying to get to the Sun Belt, if you will, and it's driving up construction, and it's causing this shortage of products?
Well, I know around here you've got situations with interest rates, and the cost of home ownership is higher now. We're able to maintain our level of business, and also commercial real estate is strong in Mobile, and you're seeing, and that's one of the main indicators of a recession that's coming, that they're talking about the commercial real estate bubble.
Oh, really?
Because of the refinancing of the loans being a good bit higher in cost than they were, you're going to see banks take over properties.
So we've talked about labor shortages. We've talked about material challenges. Labor shortages was high on the electricians, you said. Is there a certain material that you are now having to wait for much longer than ever before? They still can't catch up?
One of the things that came to mind was HVAC equipment.
Yeah.
There's some new specs on that. That's pretty new. One of them, it's called gas reheat, for instance, and it's a new part of an air conditioner that helps dehumidify the air.
Yeah.
And some of those air conditioner units are taking a year to get.
No kidding.
So it's kind of along those same lines on those larger electrical service projects. You're seeing that on air conditioner units too, on commercial air conditioner units.
Are your customers getting bent out of shape about this? Are your customers coming to you angry and saying, "Hey, why is this taking so long?" Or do they mostly understand?
Well, a lot of them understand that things are more difficult now. But what you're seeing is sometimes on those long lead times, and you're waiting that period of time, sometimes it gets pushed out further.
Yeah.
And so there's some frustrations with that.
Does it impact how you can invoice? Does it impact your cash flow? Everything's taking so much longer.
Right. I mean, it definitely slows it down. And one of the things it does is increase costs just because of the duration of the project. You figure a certain amount of time to have your staff mobilized.
Yeah.
And if it takes 15% more time, that's 15% more money you spend.
It's changed the way you bid projects now?
It has definitely, because you have to factor all that in.
What about the supply chain? That was a big conversation. There were stories. I was actually in Long Beach, California during the height of the supply chain issue, and it was just skyscrapers of containers all waiting to get moved somewhere. And it was acute. Even I, with an untrained eye, could see that there was a problem. What's the supply chain issue like now in commercial construction?
It's better. You still have those couple of things that we discussed that are still out there. But overall, like it's much easier to get metal studs now and sheetrock and roofing materials. And the price of lumber really escalated during COVID.
Yes, it did.
Because one of the things that fueled that was the low interest rates. So when you started seeing the interest rates climb, it gave an inverse impact to the cost of lumber.
Yeah. And lumber is coming back down?
It is.
Is it back down to where it was or still coming down?
It's probably not quite back down to what it was before COVID, but it's probably within striking range of that.
You have done government contracting, haven't you?
We have.
What is that like? Is it, we had a guy on here talking about ESG not long ago. It's a very controversial topic. I'm curious what it takes for you guys to get into government contracting and whether that's a piece of work that you like or not.
Well, we do. We do like it. We've done some projects over the years for South Alabama and, the health department. We've done some for them and great clients, both of them. And that's kind of we've done some for Mobile Water. That's kind of our niche that we have with those three. And we have great experiences with them. Of course, they have our money, so they can pay.
Yeah.
And usually the pay is timely and the interactions we have with them are very positive.
Is it take an extraordinary amount of prep to do those bids, much more so than it would be a private contract or a private client customer?
It's actually probably easier at times because you have, with those contracts, the architects have to be probably a little more thorough with what they're doing. And so you have more answers in terms, there's less vague, areas to look at.
And is it something you hope to pursue more in the future, or as the economy rights itself, continues to right itself, however we may define that, you think a government contract is good for when times are bad, but when times are good, I'd prefer not to do government contracting?
If it makes sense.
If it makes sense.
That's right.
It's a cryptic answer. He's sitting there smiling, folks. He knows what he means. I don't know what he means, and I'm certain some of you listening knows what he means, but if it makes sense.
Any decision we make in any business has to take critical thinking involved.
Paul Lewis is sitting in front of me. His company is Roy Lewis Construction. We're talking about the world of the construction world today. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be right back.
I'm Paul Lewis, General Manager of Roy Lewis Construction. Many of our commercial buildings you drive by daily on both sides of the bay are the fruits of our client relationship since our beginning in the early 80s. It is our mission to bring value to our clients, from retrofits to ground-up construction and everything in between. We have more advocates than any of our competitors who have been in business twice as long. Same with repeat business, same with referrals. Find us online at roylewisconstruction.com and let's talk about your next commercial project.
Hey, this is Cam Marston. My What's Working radio show has given me a front row seat to what's going on in today's workplace and workforce. I'm taking what I've learned and delivering it as a live presentation. If your company, team, or association is looking for a speaker to kick off or wrap up your event, check out my presentations at my website, cammarston.com, or find me on YouTube to watch some sample videos. You can expect actionable and relevant content delivered with lots of humor. On my site, you can find my client list and testimonials. I welcome your calls and your emails. Reach out. Let's find a way to deliver fresh, thought-provoking, actionable content to your event. We're back back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. In the studio today, Paul Lewis is sitting across from me. His company is Roy Lewis Construction. He's been a longtime advertiser on this show, and we've enjoyed a friendship since he started. We're going to get into a little bit about the history of the company, and what I think is going to be interesting to me and the listeners is the lessons learned since your company began in 1984. So we opened the segment 2 with a little bit of the background of this company. Tell me a little bit more, if you would. It was started by your father. How was it? What do you remember in 1984? You can't have been that old in 1984, a young man like me in 1984. Tell me a little bit more of the story.
Well, I do remember visiting him some at Ray's office, and they had a great operation there. Ray was very well known in the community, one of the go-to guys, and Roy at a pretty young age became the executive vice president of Ray Sumlin Construction. But I think, like a lot of entrepreneurs, you just have that pull, to find out what you can do, and so he did. And so he went out on his own and went out on faith, really. He spent several months not getting paid. When you start a business, cash isn't there, so he had some projects, and so they went through that. And, when you do that, your assets dwindle a little bit, but it all worked out. And so, I started in the summer of, I think, 87, working part-time when I was 12. Yeah. And so that was interesting. We were doing some dorms at South Alabama. We built several dorms out there, and there were just mountains of trash, 10 feet apart, it seemed, when I was that age. And so that my job was to help load those in the dump truck and get them gone. So I did that, and it was character building. You didn't have time you didn't have much to do in the summer except work at my house at that age and beyond. So anyway, we had a good reputation. We did those dorms at South, but a lot of our work over the year has been in the private sector, from like dentists and medical offices and retail, things like that, and at some point we didn't market. We didn't have to. The phone rang and people chose us. A lot of our work was what a lot of guys in construction call negotiated projects, where an owner will pick you specifically from the get-go. And so we would help get the projects designed, work with the designers, get it priced, get it built. And a lot of times what that did was lead to a good experience with that owner, and that owner would then in turn recommend us or use us again. Yeah. And so that was a good, I guess, snowball that began in the late 80s and continued for a long period of time. So we were used to, I guess, how things were good. And then that environment changed pretty quickly. Business environment changed pretty quickly. 2007, we started to see the slowdown. 2006 was probably the heydays of the mid-2000s. Started to see a slowdown coming, and then 2008 was a drastic slowdown. So what ended up happening was our marketing was our phone ringing and doing those jobs, and then soon thereafter, you were bidding in government contracts because that's all there was. Yeah. So it was a drastic change. And so that's when it's like that, it's difficult to adapt to quickly. Yeah. And so in the past, the recessions we'd been in were fairly short-lived in Mobile, and we could get things going again. So that's kind of what we did, was keep our guys on the payroll and get projects at a pretty low bid to keep the guys working. And so over a period of years that, it's not a profitable environment to work in. Yeah. With that option you have. And so fast forward to 2012, at the end of 2012, after about 4 years of that, we decided to discontinue operations. And so we did. And so in that period of time, I went to company we had worked for as a subcontractor during some hurricane work, and that was C-Sharp Company. And I went there, and it was just a big change from doing, Roy and I worked together, but he did his portion of the company, and then I would bring in the projects for myself to work on. And so we kind of operated together, but we kind of cultivated our own relationships. And so that was something new to work for somebody else.
Yeah. So let me catch the listeners up if they're not aware of what 2007, 8, 9 was. This is there are plenty that know, but that's called the Great Recession. And it's when our economy, through various different reasons, which we won't get into, really tumbled. And my business tumbled at that time too. I began taking work that months before I was turning my nose up at fees for my seminars and workshop, at fees that were things that I hadn't charged in 10 years, having to take that work in order to keep the lights on. So I remember the pain of that. And I spent an extraordinary amount of time driving to events to deliver the content, whereas 4 months earlier, I was flying to those events in order to save every price or every penny. I remember a long drive through the middle of the night to Jacksonville, Florida, in order to do a program for Merrill Lynch that I thought it wasn't long ago that I would have subcontracted this out and taken a piece of that revenue, but now I'm taking it myself. So continue. I wanted to catch the listener up, but continue. It's now 2012. You decide to put the company to let it go. You're now an employee of someone else.
Roy would refer to that as his retirement years.
Yeah.
But what we did was we discontinued operations and just closed the book on Roy Lewis Construction. And it was something that I was not anticipating ever to come in my life.
Yeah.
And you always think of something like that always being around, and I had that mentality. We had gotten used to things, honestly, being easy.
Yeah.
Because of when you build relationships with owners, you build good relationships with your employees and your subcontractors. You can make what you do look easy.
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah.
So what I thought, my expectation from then forward was that chapter was closed and that pen no longer would write in terms of a history for what we had. And so I'm not saying that it made me, super disappointed. It did, but I just, that's part of life, with what you go through. You just learn to keep going, and that's what we did. And so I never had an expectation to be here talking with you about continued Roy Lewis Construction.
And it was rebirthed.
It was. One of the things, as I look back, was and this was not just careers, probably before that, there was probably a little bit to be desired from a maturity standpoint and in business as well. And one of the things I feel like I learned when I went and worked at C# was better business discipline. Mm-hmm. And that, some of the lessons we have in life are painful. And sometimes the painful ones are the most have the most dividends, if that makes sense.
Sure.
You never would choose a path to go down like that, but it makes you someone that you weren't before, and that has, in my opinion, that has value.
When did you, I love this, when did you decide and how and what happened that made you say, hey, let's start this thing again?
Well, it's an interesting story, and I'll keep it short, but we just thought our way of life would change, where with C# being in Orange Beach, we'd move to Baldwin County. And so we had plans for that. And long story short, it didn't happen. And there's reasons for that. But I had grown tired of, because that didn't happen, I had grown tired of commuting to Orange Beach. That's a pretty good commute each day to get down there and back. And so I had a phone call from White Spunner Construction. We had worked with them when I was at C# as a contractor for them. Well, anyway, that relationship was built, and they needed some help there. So the transition made sense at the time. And so that was another good experience for me to see how, other GCs do things in terms of their organization and their people structure and just how they run that business. So it's a valuable time there. But during that time, we had bought a lot here in Mobile, and we're building a house. And Roy and I it was almost at the end of the house, and Roy and I were in the backyard. The lot sloped a little bit, so we had to build a deck. Well, anyway, we were close to finishing that deck, and we started talking, and it came up, do you think there would be a market for us still in Mobile? And because that was 3.5 years in then, and the trail wasn't cold yet.
Yeah.
And so he, I guess both of us kind of stepping out on faith, because that's what we wanted to do, we started bidding work again. And it wasn't long after that we had some work. And so we pushed ahead.
Yeah.
And it's been when you have something you love to do, and I love to do it before I had to move on, and you get a second chance, you're not gonna screw up, or you're gonna do your best not to screw that up.
Man, there ain't nothing like second chances, which brings me to a conversation you and I had when we were having lunch a couple of weeks ago. Faith is a big, strong part of your life, and a big, strong part of, I think, if I understood our conversation correctly, the way you structure your business. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, through that whole journey, you can talk about a business being rebirth. You can talk about lessons learned. You can talk about, growing up. I had to grow up in my mid-30s. There was room for that. The biggest lesson I learned in this was the lesson of faith.
Yeah.
And the reason that is because during all of that, I never had an expectation to have a chance to get back and do this again. And so, and I guess in a way you could say that was a mountain that I had built in my mind. You could say that.
Yeah.
And I believe that mountain was a firm mountain. And when that mountain no longer was there, and the possibility, you get to see what's possible beyond yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I learned, was that even though I had closed that chapter, there was more chapters to be written.
It's a good story. It's a good story. Paul Lewis is sitting with me. We're in the studio talking about his company, Roy Lewis Construction. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be right back. Customer service never goes out of style. In fact, I think it's safe to say that customer service is more valuable and more important now more than ever. Hi, this is Cam Marston. One thing that my over 200 episodes of What's Working has taught me is how important customer service is to building and maintaining a thriving business. It's the growing need for customer service that's led me to partner with one of the state's leading customer service trainers to create our program called Delivering 5-Star Customer Service. Your team will get one 90-minute training session per month for 6 consecutive months. Each session builds on the skills learned the previous month, allowing your customer-facing teams to practice before moving on to the next lesson. And the 6 lessons address everything from appearance to electronic communications to conflict resolution to maintaining a service mindset. Our program travels and is delivered in person at your workplace, nothing virtual. You simply can't practice the level of the skills this course teaches virtually. For more information, email me, cam@cammarston.com, and let's schedule a time to talk. Remember, you have less to fear from outside competition than you do from discourtesy and bad service from inside your own company. Again, email me, cam@cammarston.com, and let's talk about your business.
Is paying a real estate agent worth the money? I'm Angelo DiPaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty. Great real estate agents are like the best doctors. They listen deeply, make your goals their own, stay current on trends that impact your decisions, and have experience navigating unexpected situations. We help our clients make the best real estate decisions along the Gulf Coast. Google me, Angelo DiPaola, the Coastal Connection.
I'm Cam Marston. You're listening to What's Working. I'm in the studio today. Paul Lewis is sitting across from me. He runs Roy Lewis Construction. We're hearing the story of this business. He's been a longtime advertiser of the show, and it was when he and I were having lunch a couple weeks ago that I learned a little bit more of the depth and the detail and the background and the trends that are shaping his company. And I said, man, you're a show. You've got content. You're a show. And we're going to get into now segment 4, which is something, if you're a regular listener, you'll recognize is a list of questions that I'm offering each of these guests to get a little bit off the business track and more into them personally as well as professionally, but a little bit more personally. So, Paul, if you're ready, we'll start going down this list. Can I get an okay?
Sure.
Here we go. What is your favorite business book?
Well, a book I'm reading right now is by Adam Grant, and it's called Give and Take. And he is a professor at Wharton, and he is a behavioral psychologist. And so what he is examining, and kind of a deep dive actually, is there's three types of people, like an ethos of a business person. There's the givers, there's the takers, and there's the matchers. And the givers, you know how they say that nice guys finish last? Well, and that might be true in some regards, but the givers are the people that look out for the prospects of others. They try to take care of the needs of others, help people improve in business, like people they're in charge of. And then the takers, they're more calculated. When they're giving, they're looking for something in return every time. And then you have someone called a matcher, and they're kind of in the middle. They're kind of calculating. They like to help people, but they want to make sure there's a good possibility of reciprocity there. And so what he surmises is, sure, at the bottom performance level, he looked at engineering companies, he looked at sales positions and other positions, that at the bottom rung of performers, you do see a lot of givers there in those percentages. But at the top end of the performance, you see a lot of givers there also. So, and Jack Welch, if you're familiar with his philosophies, he was the same way. He was like, if you take care of your people long term, those people are going to have more success in business.
Yeah. We had a guy on the show named Richard Jolly, and he called something similar. He called it the reciprocity, the theory of reciprocity. Find ways to give people what they want. And in time, they will come back and help you the same way. They would be, I think, based on what you've just described, givers, according to the author of the book. And he was very firm, Richard Jolly was very firm with the theory of reciprocity is what grows business in our age today. I'm glad to hear it's being spoken of in a different way in that book. All right, question 2. What one trend in your marketplace excites you about your business?
I think where we are in the Southeast, in Mobile, Alabama, there's momentum. And it appears to be like it will probably be sustained for a period of time. I like that. I like that in today's world, if you have a good reputation, you can find people that will base using you on that. And what we do, our niche, I guess you could say, is it all that unfolds in a organized way to where we like to take care of people. We like to add value. We like to do all that. We treat our employees well. But I think what you'll find is in that influence or sphere we're talking about, we match up well.
Nice. The city of endless potential here in Mobile is finally reaching perhaps some of its potential. Number 3, what trend in the marketplace worries you?
I think AI is going to be it's going to be good and bad. We're seeing banks being designed differently now to where in the past you might have a dozen employees in a bank, and now you're starting to see some of them geared toward more like 2 employees.
Yeah.
And you're seeing consolidation of like years ago, like some of the super Walmarts we have here are 200,000 square feet. Well, now some of them are shy of 100,000 square feet. So you're seeing consolidation in what the big businesses do. And over time, you may see some employment downsizing because of AI, because they can do some jobs that you typically would need a person for. They can do that.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see some major changes in the next decade in regards to that. Not just construction, but in every way.
Yeah, I probably told you this when we were having lunch. This guy that I interviewed, Heikki Malinen, who is the CEO of Outokumpu up the road, the big steel plant, said AI will change our life more so than even the cell phone did. And when you imagine how much our cell phones have changed our life, to say that AI will have even greater impact, I quote him all the time regarding that, but that one shocks me. All right. AI in the marketplace worries you. There's a lot of people that feel the same way. Number 4, the biggest business mistake you've made.
The business, we got into it a little bit, but one of the biggest business mistakes I made was just assuming that just because things are good, that they'll remain that way.
Yeah.
And that's not the case at all. One of the big mistakes I made during our heyday in the past, Roy Lewis Construction 1.0, I'll call it, is, because our phone was ringing, we weren't as connected to the marketplace as we should be. And so we've made efforts in that regard to talk to a lot more different representatives from the marketplace that work in different genres of the marketplace. So we're tied in a lot better than we were before, and we kind of know who to talk to just kind of to get info on things we don't see every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Give me an example.
Okay, so years ago there was a tip. We call it a tips group, but we would meet on Friday mornings, and it would be 20 people sometimes from different genres of the market, like commercial real estate, marketing people that sold commercial furniture, that type of thing, and so everybody would kind of talk about what they were seeing. And so I'm not in that group anymore, but I still talk to a lot of the same people.
Yeah.
And so I just get to see, commercial real estate guys, they're saying, Mobile is very strong right now, and that's not a national trend.
Yeah.
And so you really have to always update your intel, always.
One of the things you and I talked about in lunch is me pulling together the advertisers to say, what are the challenges you guys are facing in your world? And let me try to find the guests that can help address those challenges for the benefit of your own business. And it's similar to the tips group. It's something that I intend to do here in the next month or so. But I think getting that intel from different sources is always valuable. What is your favorite news source for business content?
I read a lot. A lot of what I read is not always business related, but I get it from a lot of different places. I like Lanyap. I mean, that's not a lot of business, but in there. But you do get to read a lot of articles about what's going on locally, and then Bay Business. I read that.
Yeah.
And then I read a lot of national publications also, and I probably that can be negative sometimes because you read enough news, it'll disturb you.
I read the headlines in the first paragraph and move along because it's tough. I'm with you on that. All right. From which generation do you wish you had more employees?
I wish we had more young people because we have a great mix of age groups that are employees, and they start in their 20s, and we have a few guys in their 60s. And of course, you like the experience of the guys in the 60s, but you like the back of the guy in his 20s.
Yeah.
But those guys, we do a good job, I think, of letting those older guys bring the younger guys along.
Yeah.
I wish we had more younger guys because, in 5 years, a lot of those guys in their 60s we're not going to have anymore. But the whole industry is going to be that way. And so those people that figure out a way to adapt and get through that, and they're going to thrive.
The generation you enjoy working with the most?
It's a tough question because I like the age group. I like all of them, having stuff in common with all of them. It's tough to pick one. Like I said a few minutes ago, I like the experience guys, but the guys, honestly, the guys that are kind of in the middle have the experience. We have a few of those guys that are in the middle that have a good bit of experience, but still have youth left. I'm not going to say they're my favorite, but they give me hope.
That's a very good and politically correct answer. I salute you for doing that so well. All right, this is interesting. I enjoy this question. It's Saturday afternoon at 4:00. What are you most likely to be doing?
I thought about this question, and that time of day, I like to grill, and my boys like grilled chicken. And I've got a good recipe for blackened grilled chicken, and so I like to shop at Mosley's and get a nice New York strip of ribeye for me. But then I like to grill.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time doing that. And a lot of time on Saturday mornings, I'm playing golf. That's my time on the course.
Good. You've just won the lottery for $500 million. What is the first thing you're buying?
That's a difficult question. You're going to pay off your house. You're going to do that.
That's a good answer.
The reason that's a tough question because there's so many good nonprofits that need.
Well, let's go to the second part of that question. Okay. What is the first organization you're donating money to?
That's a difficult question too.
You're dodging these questions by acknowledging the difficulty of the questions.
I'll tell you the ones that we have a really close relationship and they would definitely be getting money is we Light of the Village where we help them. We work with them some, Ransom Ministries, Matt Armbruster, and then McKimmey Place also. And Matt's wife helps run McKimmey Place. And they're all making a difference. And of course, I'm pretty partial to Spring Hill Baptist Church too.
Good one. Last one, your favorite vacation destination?
We're a snow skiing family.
Yeah.
So we try to make it out there once a year, and we do. And that's where my kids that's where my wife likes, so that's what we do.
Excellent. Paul Lewis, guest today, Roy Lewis Construction. Thank you so much for coming in.
It was great.
I look forward to our next lunch together and digging more into this. You're listening to What's Working. We'll be right back after this break with final comments.
At Roy Lewis Construction, we're in the business of adding value. Whether it's working with you to meet your unique business needs or making investments in our community in lasting ways, providing unparalleled value and quality in every commercial construction project. When planning your next commercial project, reach out to Roy Lewis Construction. We'll pair you with a designer that best suits your project needs and work with that designer to balance the best architectural outcome with the best budget outcome. Find us online at roylewisconstruction.com, building legacies one relationship at a time.
Hi, I'm Christina Warner McInnes, CEO of Agritech Corp. And when I'm not solving the over 80% of homeowners that are dissatisfied with their lawn and garden with soil testing, I'm listening to What's Working with Cam Marston. Now back to the show.
This is Cam Marston. You're listening to What's Working. We're into segment 5, which is kind of the show's recap and an anticipation of what you can expect upcoming, a little bit of self-promotion stuff. Let's touch on what we heard from Paul there just a moment ago. And first, I want to tell you this. I like the guy. And if you know him, you'd like him too. He's a humble, genuine, honest, caring, empathetic person. He's the full package. And in a business that can be very serious, very margin-driven, I get a sense of why he's successful at what he does. First, and he's talked about this in the advertisements that we play on the show for him, emphasize this as well. They do a good job. Their products are highly regarded by their customers, which is one of the causes or one of the sources of their repeat business. But then, so that's undoubtedly important. But when you meet the guy, you can't help but like him. And I think if you know him, you know what I'm talking about. It's a part of what makes them successful. The trends that we are wondering about, I was wondering about the building trends, if it was over, that had been caused by COVID, all these difficulties and challenges that had been caused by COVID. I wondered if they were over, or are we just so used to them now that we no longer talk about them? And it sounds like it's a mixture. There are things that are back to normal, but one of the things that's not is labor. I've heard conversations about, there were people saying, hey, this labor shortage that we're experiencing now was predicted 20 years ago, was predicted 10 years ago. As we began to look at the demographics and the birth rate trends and things of that nature, along with the projected growth of our nation, these labor trends are not new. They've been out there. We've been predicting them. We're blaming them on the COVID times. We're blaming them as some sort of long tendril of COVID, whereas in fact, they were predicted a long time ago. I don't know about that. And that's something that I think would be a good conversation on this show. How much of today's labor shortages are a result of COVID? How much of them have been predicted well before our times today due to people who follow birth rate trends, economic growth, and things like that? So here's the question. If you know somebody who can speak intelligently to those trends and help us all understand them, I would love an introduction to them and perhaps get them on the show. If you know this person, reach out to me at CAM, at cammarston.com. That's my email. You can find that same email at my website, which is, you guessed it, cammarston.com. It would be interesting to hear that take on the demographics of our society today. And this is a volatile comment that I'm about to make, and there will be those nodding their head fervently saying he's right. There will be those shaking their head in disgust saying, I'll never listen to him again. But there's a lot of people that want to come into our country that are likely a solution to our workforce challenges. Should they be allowed to? Is amnesty accurate? Whatever. It's a big political conversation. But you can't help but think that, gosh, we've got these labor shortages, and this is me. We've got these labor shortages. It's critical. We can't get anything done. The last time I was in Lowe's buying something, there was not one person at the register. It was all self-checkout, which is a pain in my rear. I don't like that. I feel like the price that I pay for the product includes having somebody help me buy it. But we've got all these labor shortages. We got all these people that want to come in. Isn't there an opportunity here? And I am not smart enough to know the political stuff of that and don't want to, frankly. Which leads me to another comment. If any of you out there have a solution for how to get business news without getting the pulse elevated by looking at the headlines, I'd love to know how you do it. Paul and I are in the same thing. You glance at it, but you don't go too deep because it gets awfully frustrating, angering. I don't know what the word is, but I try not to read too much of the news. And even though I say this on an FM talk station, I try not to listen to the news too much. It just really is polarizing out there. Anyway, thanks to Paul Lewis. Paul, I sure appreciate you coming in and being a part of the show. Wish you the best. What's Working is produced by John Thompson with Ion Digital. And I haven't said this in a while, but every time I say that means John's sitting at home taking out my ands, my ums, and my you-knows, and it's another day that he can't spend sitting in the beautiful blue waters north of Horn Island drinking beer. We'll have another show next week. Have a good week, everybody. Thanks for listening. As you likely know, this show originates as a radio show broadcast across the state of Alabama, and it continues to grow in both radio listeners and market. After it's formatted for radio, we then turn it into this podcast. Please share it with those you think would find it interesting, and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube page where you can leave messages and your thoughts and your comments, and I'll certainly get back in touch. Finally, if you're a fan of the show, please offer a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find my book called What Works on Amazon.com. In it, I highlight the top 10 ideas from the first 200 episodes of the show. Mind you, they're not the top 10 best episodes, they're the top 10 best ideas. Many times the same ideas are brought up again and again by different guests, and we dig into those ideas in such a way that they'll be easily applicable for your business. Simply go to Amazon and enter my name, and you'll find What Works as well as my other books. Chapter titles include How to Find a Niche, Innovation, Building Teams, and so forth. To learn more about the workshops and seminars I offer, go to cammarston.com. There you can view clips of my work, view workshop titles, view my reviews, case studies, customer lists. It's all there. If you'd like a free copy of one of the chapters of my book, enter your email address at the bottom of the homepage at cammarston.com. And from that site, you can email me directly. I always love to hear from you. You'll also find me on social media. Find Cam Marston on all the social media platforms, and you may need to enter the numeral 1. There's one other Cam Marston out there, and that numeral 1 distinguishes me from him from time to time. So if you're unsure if it's me or not, enter that numeral 1 after my name, and it should do the trick. On a more personal and less professional side, I record weekly commentaries that air across Alabama on Alabama Public Radio twice each day on Fridays called Keeping It Real. They've won statewide and national awards. They're simple observations on the world as it goes on around me, and they're only a few minutes long. They're a passion. You can find them on the same podcast app you're using to listen to this. Finally, if you're interested in advertising on this podcast or the radio show, reach out. I've worked hard to cultivate a specific listener, and I can tell you all about them, and I have many different options for helping you reach them. Thanks again for listening. We'll have another episode available soon.